Hey, it's James here from GoodGuitarist.com, and today I want to discuss 4 bad habits that I see people make. Whether they're just getting started on guitar, or maybe they've even been playing for a really long time, either way, these bad habits lead to them having trouble making clean chord shapes. And time and again, it's always at least one or more of these things that we're going to talk about today that's holding them back. Really quick before we get started, if you have not grabbed your copy of my free ebook, I'm going to put a link in the corner and down below in the description. It goes over everything you need. It's 100% free for my subscribers, so grab your copy now. Otherwise, we're going to get started. Our first bad habit is placing your fingers in the middle of the fret. And this one might be pretty obvious to some of you, but long story short, you're supposed to press close to the fret. So if you want to play this box right here, you get your finger as close to the fret as possible. If I play it right here, I'm going to use the same amount of pressure, barely doing anything. So you get way more leverage next to it. And there's a bit of a caveat there. With some chord shapes, you simply cannot put your fingers right next to the fret. Like with the A chord, for instance, when we're stacking our fingers like this, my ring finger's in a great spot, but my middle finger gets budged over a bit and my index gets budged over a bit. It ends up in the middle of the fret. And that's why the A chord is one of the harder chords for people getting started. But whether you're really experienced or just getting started, it makes way more sense to put your fingers in a place where it requires the least energy, because like when you're an experienced player and you're going to play like a 2-hour gig, it's going to add up if your technique is poor, and it's not going to be good for your overall like wrist and hand health either way. So it's worth it, even if you've been playing for a while, to just assess where you're at with all your chord shapes and make sure your fingers are as close to the fret as possible. The next bad habit is where your thumb kind of trails off to the side. And honestly, when I'm even just like imitating it there, it hurts so much. My fingers feel so much shorter because my thumb's in a weird place, so I can't get them nice and arched and strong. I've even seen some people using like the ball of their thumb to press on the back of the neck. And when you do that, it just kind of cinches your wrist in a certain way that's going to damage your tendons. And it's going to ensure that your fingers aren't able to do their job. Now, everybody's hands are a little bit different, but you want your thumb pointing upright for the most part. When I have my thumb trailing off to the side like this and I try to play like a G chord, I can barely reach anything. Whereas if I straighten out my thumb, get my elbow out a bit, it kind of puts everything in the position where it's sounding good, where I'm able to reach all the strings and everything like that. And it doesn't have to be like, perfectly perpendicular. Everybody's a little bit different. You find what's comfortable for you. Ultimately, you don't want to forget about your thumb. You want to be very conscious of it until it just does its job automatically. The next bad habit I call floppy fingers. And this ties into the thumb thing. We kind of already alluded to this. People usually have these issues at the same time. If your thumb is off to the side, your fingers are flopping down on the strings and it takes a lot of effort to get them curled, and you end up muting all these excess strings. Whereas if my thumb's in a good spot, it pushes my knuckles forward and all of a sudden my fingers are longer. Just take a look at this. If my thumb is in a bad place, my knuckles are down here and my fingers start down there. I can barely reach the thickest string. If I get my knuckles forward though, I can reach like 2 inches above the guitar, like it's so much easier to get in the right position that way. And you'll especially notice it when you're trying to learn the C chord, because that one requires a lot of reach with your ring finger, which isn't necessarily one of the dominant fingers on your hand, right? So you really got to get your thumb in a good spot for that one. And, just to hammer my point home, I have a bit of a visualization. It might seem a little bit gruesome, but it's a good example. Imagine you're hanging off the edge of a cliff. Are you going to be holding it like this? You're holding on for dear life, are you going to be holding on to it like this with flat hands, or are you going to be clawing into it with everything you got like a cat? You're going to have way more power in your fingers that way. And that's how you want to play guitar. Now, the final bad habit that I see is related to pressure. Not pressing hard enough or pressing too hard. And this one is tricky for a couple reasons. First of all, a lot of people tend to overpress, because their thumb isn't in the right spot, their fingers aren't arched, they're not pressing close enough to the fret, and they compensate for that by pushing super duper hard. And that's not good in the long run because it's using more strength than you need to. It's putting stress on your tendons, your fingers, your wrist. So there's a reason why I give this piece of advice last, because I want you to try all those other things first, get the proper technique going first. And when it comes to pressing, it's not just your fingers or your fingertips that are pressing. You want to make sure that you're sitting up straight, your shoulders and your back are helping. You're kind of pulling your arm back with your shoulder too. And that way it takes a lot of the pressure off of your fingers and you're applying it more with the entire system, right? So we're spreading that workload. It's also important to make sure that you're not pressing too hard, because that way, here I can bend the string just by pressing it more. So you're kind of playing out of tune if you're pressing too hard, and you're just killing yourself, So that's another thing to be aware of. So that's it for today. A nice short one. 4 things that you can do to get your chord shapes sounding clean. Now, obviously, making a clean chord shape by itself is just the start of it. The next step is to be able to switch between chord shapes while maintaining all the things that we talked about today. Switching chords and keeping your thumb in a good spot, keeping your fingers arched, pressing close to the fret, and if you want an opportunity to work on all that, I have a free crash course that's designed for absolute beginners, and it'll make sure that you have the right stuff to get started. And we're even going to learn a couple songs, and if you're past that phase and maybe you're looking to get your rhythm together, your chord switching for all the main chord shapes, I also have a premium course, Learn Guitar Once and For All, which does that. Same thing as a crash course, but 1,000 times more stuff. And it guides you through it all step by step. It trains you up, teaches you how to play songs, reinforces the knowledge that you already have. It takes you as far as you need to go, in an organized way, making sure that you end up accomplishing all those goals that you have when it comes to learning guitar. And I'm going to put info for all that stuff up in the corner and down below in the description. So, help yourself, my free ebook, free crash course, whatever you like. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. That is one of the best ways to help support the channel and keep these free guitar lessons coming. Have a fun time practicing, and I'll see you soon.